Apartheid in death, the scandal of the racism in honouring Commonwealth war casualties. A government apology after a report found tens of thousands of black and Asian troops who fought for Britain were not properly commemorated.
On behalf of the Commonwealth War Graves Commission and the government both of the time and today, I want to apologise for the failures to live up to their founding principles.
Also ahead, the desperate scenes in India as the country sees the highest number of daily COVID cases anywhere in the world. The Global Climate Change Conference. Is this the last chance for world leaders to try to save the planet and what it could mean for you? The unlikely duo. We speak to the top chef teaming up with Marcus Rashford to make sure no child goes hungry. And
1, 2, 3, I do my hair toss, check my nails.
can the Brits get back to this? Why an audience will be able to watch this year's awards.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hossain.
Good afternoon. A government apology today for racism in the aftermath of the First World War. A new report has confirmed that tens of thousands of black and Asian troops were treated differently in death to their white counterparts. The Defence Secretary expressed deep regret and promised to rectify the inequality after many were not commemorated by name or possibly not commemorated at all. The injustice has been described as apartheid in death. Here's our political correspondent, Carl Dinnan.
They stand across the world as simple and moving memorials to those who lost their lives in the two world wars. Every rank and Commonwealth nationality supposedly remembered equally. But they are not. And today the Defence Secretary apologised for that injustice.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Commonwealth War Graves Commission and the government both of the time and today, I want to apologise for the failures to live up to their founding principles all those years ago and express deep regret that it has taken so long to rectify the situation.
54,000 mainly Indian and African casualties of World War I, men like these King's African Rifles, were not equally remembered. Up to 350,000 not commemorated at all, for reasons researchers found of ignorance and racism.
There's General Cox, who is from the Indian Army, and he recommends to the Commonwealth Graves Commission that graves of Hindus and Muslims don't mind. It is of no importance to them, other words he used, whether they have gravestones or not. And this is just so wrong.
It was this documentary, fronted by MP David Lammy, which prompted the report.
These are the British graves. Where are the Africans buried?
This is the place where Africans are buried.
But this is just a...
They're buried here.
The bodies are buried here?
Yes.
Why do you think this has taken so very long?
Look, I think that it's been very hard, even for beloved organisations like the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, to look at uglier truths in terms of our historical past. And we need to re-educate as a country and our young people to understand the contribution that those people from the wider Commonwealth made to that important war effort.
And the War Graves Commission now has work to do.
We've got to find the names of the missing, and we've got to see if we can find the burial sites of the missing, which we recognise is going to be hard, but we'll do that. We are going to be, once we've got names, we will then put them on memorials.
It is too late to ensure that those who died together can now lie together as equals, but at long last there will be an attempt at greater equality of remembrance. Carl Dinnan, ITV News.
Next to the COVID crisis that is overwhelming India. The country has recorded the highest daily number of cases anywhere in the world since the start of the pandemic. A large number of hospitals are reporting acute shortages of beds and are running dangerously low on levels of oxygen. The number of deaths in the past 24 hours is now above 2,000. Sangeeta Lal has the latest.
People desperately waiting to admit their loved ones who are dying from this devastating virus. India has descended into tragedy as more than 300,000 new cases have been reported in 24 hours. Hospitals are running out of beds. Oxygen levels are running low. The government says it's rushing out supplies, but for thousands, it's already too late. There was no oxygen. She died in agony, she says. This woman has just lost her mother to coronavirus after spending 5 days in hospital. She says everyone on her mother's ward died. This Hindu festival and the India variant, including the double mutant strain, have been blamed by experts for the rapid rise in cases.
It seems to be capable of infecting more easily to people. So that might be one reason why the case numbers are going up.
Just how dangerous is this variant that's spreading across India?
It is going to create havoc amongst people because finding a bed is so tough. To see so many people crying, so many people really desolate.
India has now reported the highest daily cases in the entire world. From 4 a.m. tomorrow, it'll be added to the UK's red list of banned countries. Many Britons still out there say they're just trying to be careful.
Everyone's trying to avoid going out. If there is no a proper reason to go out, everyone's trying to stay at home. Obviously, in the city where we are in, there is a night curfew as well, so people can't go out after 9 o'clock anyways. But we are not leaving home until it's actually really, really required. We're not leaving home.
As well as curfews, the Indian Prime Minister has advocated micro-containment zones to try and prevent the spread. But with more sick people being admitted into a fragile health system, many here say they see no end to this vicious second wave. Sangeeta Lal, ITV News.
We can go live now to Rebecca Bandhan, who's a journalist in Mumbai. Rebecca, over the past few days, we've seen some desperate scenes in India.
That's right. It's really putting a huge pressure on the country's healthcare system, this second wave of the virus. We're seeing hospitals that are running low on oxygen supplies. They are running out of beds as well. It's seen across social media here in India. There are messages going all around when people are just desperately trying to find a bed or trying to get hold of medicine. It's really that bad in parts of the country. There are some parts of the country that have introduced lockdown-like restrictions or curfews. For example, in Mumbai, there are strict curbs in place at the moment. Now, the government has actually blamed people not following COVID-19 precautions for this huge surge of the virus, including people not wearing masks and not observing social distancing after the economy and things opened up following last year's strict nationwide lockdown. But the government has also been very widely criticised because election rallies have gone ahead where huge crowds have gathered and people are not wearing masks, including ones that have been addressed by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself. There was also the Kumbh Mela religious festival where hundreds of thousands of people gathered on the banks of the Ganges, again not following COVID-19 precautions at all. Now, the country's vaccination drive is well underway and the government is opening that up to people, everybody over the age of 18 from the 1st of May. But doctors are saying that's not a near-term solution, of course. That's hopefully a longer-term solution to this huge surge. But for the moment, they're really worried about the impact, especially given the spread of this new variant of the virus that's seen in India, which some doctors believe is more infectious. And they're saying it's having a greater impact on people's lungs. And they're even seeing a lot of younger people being admitted with breathing difficulties and needing ventilator support. So they're worried about the coming days and the coming weeks if these cases continue to rise in India as they are rising at the moment to these record high daily levels.
As ever, with COVID and the pandemic, a complex picture. Rebecca Bandhan, thank you very much for describing what is happening there at the moment. Thank you. The jury at the inquest into the Fishmongers Hall terrorist attack heard today there was intelligence the man who carried it out might commit an attack around the time he was released from prison for a terror offence. Jack Merritt and Saskia Jones were killed at a prison rehabilitation event in London in 2019. Our correspondent John Ray has been listening to the evidence. What details did we hear in court today about what was known about their killer?
Well, Nina, the jury at this inquest this morning has been presented with two distinct and deeply contrasting portraits of Hossain Khan. The first one was known in the prison as high-risk Khan, amongst the 70 most dangerous prisoners in the entire country, a man known to be the chief radicalizer on his wing, a man judged by a very hefty intelligence assessment to be capable of further violent acts, of plotting further terrorist attacks on his release. And then there is a second Hossain Khan, who was almost a model prisoner, an enthusiastic embracer of rehabilitation schemes within the prison. We heard from the chaplain at HMS Whitemoor, where he was serving his sentence, the Reverend Paul Foster, who said that he'd had conversations with Khan in which Khan had made it clear he wanted to mend his ways and to make a fresh start, and that he was in some way ashamed of his terrorist offence. Nor was any of the intelligence which said that Khan was a violent bully who indulged in forced conversions on the wing, passed on to Learning Together, the people who organised that conference in Fishmongers Hall, where the real Hossain Khan made himself so tragically and violently known. This inquest continues.
John Ray, thank you. 40 world leaders are meeting virtually over the next 2 days to try to save the planet for humans and animals from ever-worsening global warming. Every year, millions of people around the world are displaced by weather-related storms, floods and fires. Hundreds of billions of tons of snow and ice are lost each year, and a rise in sea levels is accelerating. An increase in carbon dioxide, along with other human-made emissions, are contributing to ever-rising temperatures. The Earth Day summit is being hosted by President Biden from the White House. With the United States being one of the world's biggest polluters, it is a chance for the president to reinstate America as the global leader on climate change. Our science editor, Tom Clark, joins me now. How significant a moment is this?
I think it's hugely significant. America has been out of this process for such a long time under the Trump administration, but even before then, it had never made really meaningful commitments to reduce its carbon emissions. And now it's come out with a really impressive one. And it's doing it at the same time as other big economies. China, the world's biggest polluter now, has overtaken America, is also coming to this summit with ambition. Let's look at what some of those pledges are. The US today announced that it wants to cut its carbon emissions by 50% by 2030. That's not very far away. That's a big reduction. China has pledged to peak its emissions by 2030 and to aim for zero by 2060. The UK has come out with an even more ambitious target, cutting our emissions by 78% by 2035, going for zero by 2050. The UK needs to show ambition here because we're hosting the climate summit in Glasgow at the end of the year, at which point all these are going to be seen out. But this is just pledges. This is not action. And it's a bit like they're all standing on the high board saying, we'll jump if you do. No one's actually put that into action yet. And I think that's the assurance we're going to need to see at that Glasgow climate summit. Are you going to deliver on these pledges? Yeah, they are great pledges and great targets, but how will they be achieved? How could it impact us? We have to remember, and this is where that whole gamble is, this is going to mean big societal change. It's huge policy stuff. We've done a lot in the UK on reducing our fossil fuels from the energy we generate. But the tough things, look at housing, for example, how we're going to improve the efficiency of housing. But there's also things that matter to individuals, the car that you drive, even the food that you eat. We will have to eat less sort of meat and dairy to reduce carbon emissions. I put it to Kwasi Kwarteng, who's the business secretary today, who's in charge of this sort of side of things policy-wise. What does he expect from British consumers?
A lot of the shift is already happening, and it's happening as a function of society changing, society becoming more aware. I mean, if you look at the consumption of meat, for example, a lot of people are now becoming eating less meat. Some people are adopting veganism, vegetarianism, and the government hasn't legislated for that. It's just that people are more conscious of their carbon footprint and are choosing that lifestyle.
So the question is whether the government can put the policies in to make it effortless, that we don't notice it happening, but they've got to do it urgently if they're going to meet those targets. Absolutely. Tom, thank you. One is a world-renowned footballer, the other a top chef. Together, they've teamed up to make sure no child goes to bed hungry.
I'm footballer Marcus Rashford. And I'm Chef Tom Kerridge.
We're joining forces to help families enjoy great meals at home, whatever their cooking experience or budget.
We're calling this project Full-Time Meals, and every week we'll be sharing a low-cost and super easy recipe for you to try at home.
So what sort of recipes can people look forward to, and will they be easy to follow, especially if parents or children are nervous in the kitchen? Just before we came on air, I spoke to Tom Kerridge about the campaign and asked him whether it's all about getting back to basics.
Exactly, that's exactly what it's doing. Imagine people, normally when I talk to people down a camera or I'm cooking, you know, recipe books or TV shows, we're talking to people that are already a foodie audience. Well, you know, this is back to basics, but this is people who can already ride a bike. You know, that's who I'm normally talking to. This is going back to people that we're on a bike with stabilizers. We're right at the beginning, and it's trying to connect with as many people as possible. That's running in connection with the Healthy Start vouchers that Marcus has pushed the value up with the government to £4.25. So that's risen from £3.50 to £4.25 per child per week that people qualify for if they qualify for free school meals, but their children are preschool age. And this voucher, you're allowed to use it for fruit and for vegetables and for pulses and pastas and that sort of thing. And it works in supermarkets and your local kind of corner shop. So it's recipes that are all around the sort of things that are pocket friendly and can connect to right into the basic level of cookery.
And why, Tom, did you personally decide to get involved? I guess when Marcus Rashford asked you, you just don't say no.
Yeah, I mean, very much so. You know, Marcus, we've all seen the last year has been such a phenomenal force and an amazing kind of driving force in showcasing the issues of child food poverty in this country. And he's an incredible and wonderfully engaging young man. But also our backgrounds are relatively similar. My mum, I grew up as a single parent family. You know, my mum had 2 jobs. She would work during the day and then go to work again in the evening to ensure that there was enough money for myself and my brother. You know, not once did we ever go hungry, not once did we ever feel that we went without. But that kind of understanding that the struggles that single parents may have and the children that come from that sort of background that qualify for free school meals and where we're at and what we can do. You know, I'm a generation apart and twice Marcus's age, but we're still now talking about it and trying to raise that awareness. And, you know, we both fully recognise that we're now in really comfortable positions. You know, Marcus is a great Premier League footballer and, you know, I'm a chef with a successful business, but actually our experiences of growing up are very, very similar. So if we could try and give something back using my skill set as a chef and then Marcus's reach and his connectivity with how many different people we can hit is being so important, and which is why the two of us have worked really well together.
Yeah, it looks like a great duo, certainly watching Marcus cooking there. The first recipe goes live this Sunday. What's your advice for any parents who just aren't confident in the kitchen, who are nervous about even doing the simplest of dishes?
Yeah, well, all of these recipes are about super simple dishes. You know, many of them are cooked in a single pan. Many of them are cooked maybe in a microwave, or actually one of the dishes is just cooked simply, boiled in a kettle. I mean, we are really going back to basics and trying to make sure that people are not fearful of a kitchen. You know, Marcus has been a great student and he freely admits, you know, that this is the first time he's peeled a carrot. You know, he's like, okay, get me in there, teach me. There is nothing to be embarrassed about. Let's have a go at cooking. And, you know, the first dish that we cooked together is this chicken satay stir fry that Marcus cooks incredibly well. I mean, it's the first time he's done it and he was amazing at it. And that's the first recipe that drops on the Full-Time Meals Instagram feed this Sunday, along with Marcus and myself.
Great, so people can get a little Tom Kerridge magic in their own homes from this Sunday. Good luck with the Full-Time campaign. Thank you.
Thank you very much, May.
Tom Kerridge there. Finally, why the Brits will be allowed to get their audience back for this year's awards. 4,000 music fans will be able to watch the show at the O2 next month, inside, without masks or social distancing. They will need a negative lateral flow test, though. The event itself is a test for the government to see if crowds will be able to return to large venues this summer. Faye Barker reports.
Welcome to the Brit Awards.
The Brits were last held in February 2020. But since then, so much has changed as the world of live events came crashing down.
But the biggest night in British music will be back in 2021, and we're told it may even look familiar. In just a few weeks, an audience of 4,000 people will be invited here to the O2. There'll be no social distancing, no face coverings, but they will need proof of a negative COVID test. It also means new artists like Arlo Parks, who's been nominated for 3 Brits, will get the opportunity to shine on the big stage.
The idea of a live audience, the idea of any kind of live gig is so important to me and so exciting for me, because I started off my career only a few years ago, and so I haven't even played a headline show in London. So for my first one to be at the O2 and to be part of kind of spreading this message of joy and hope in a difficult time is really important to me. I'm excited.
The Brits have given us so many memorable moments over the years, whether it's Michael Jackson being upstaged by Jarvis Cocker back in the 90s, or the moment in 2015 when Madonna closed the show with choreography that didn't go quite to plan. But it's been part of the government's live events pilot scheme that's making the headlines this time.
It's going to be a real moment of being together in a collective way, enjoying music, which is something that we've all missed. And I think it's going to be, it's going to be historic.
Over half of the tickets will be for key workers who can now enter a ballot for a chance to get this close to the action once again. Faye Barker, ITV News.
Keeping everything crossed. That is all we've got time for this lunchtime. Lucrezia is here with tonight's ITV Evening News at 6:30. From me and everyone on the team today, bye-bye.